The kitchen still smelled like coffee brewed in a cloth strainer when the noise of an odd engine shattered the Sunday silence. Rafaela was leaning over the table, rubbing the crumpled edge of an old photograph with her thumb. Her grandfather, Sir Onofre, straw hat and crooked smile, holding a jacaranda sapling in the middle of the red plot of land everyone wanted now. The insistent buzz of her phone rattled against the wood, and before she could reach it, her mother's voice cut across the front room, taut, "He's here, with the realtor. They came to see the lot." Rafaela drew a deep breath. News arrived faster and faster, as if life had decided to sprint without asking permission. Through the window, she saw her aunt's son-in-law, Marcio, pulling a white pickup up to the gate. Beside him, a man in an open dress shirt, dark sunglasses, and a clipboard. The realtor had barely stepped out and was already pointing at the hedge like a man measuring opportunity with his eyes. "It wasn't supposed to be today," Rafaela said, her hand still on the photograph. "We didn't agree to this." "He didn't ask for agreement," her mother Zuleika answered, appearing behind her, the apron already twisted between her fingers. From the yard, the grandmother, Donna Zulmira, appeared leaning on her walker. The pale morning sun drew a ribbon of light across the floor and brought out the white hairs tied into a tight bun. On Sundays, before any topic, there was always the ritual of coffee served in a glass tumbler and the blessing with the hand, "God keep you, my granddaughter," that Sir Onofre made a point of repeating to every person in the house. Since he'd passed, the family kept the gesture, as if trying to hold the house together with an invisible thread. Rafaela bent to touch her grandmother's hand, but the gate clapped shut, sharp like a period. Marcio came in first, his smile wider than necessary. His hair was slicked with gel, and he wore a watch that shone too much for someone who claimed to be in debt. He hugged Zuleika as if closeness could heal any wound, and the realtor stood a step behind, nodding in sync like a chorus. "Morning, family," said Marcio. "I just came to speed things up, okay? Business won't wait. The buyer's in a hurry, the money's on the table, and we wrap this soap opera today." Rafaela straightened up. She felt her heart throb in her wrist. So many unspoken things were there. The rush, the money, the buyer, and above all, the absence of a word that Sir Onofre never bargained with: consensus. "There is no deal," she replied, voice firm. "Not without the deed, and without everyone agreeing." The realtor cleared his throat, opened the folder, and pulled out a copy. He ran his fingers along the edge like a magician about to pull colored scarves out of a hat. "Deed? We've got it. Certified copy. All good. The land is part of the estate, but the widow signs, the heirs assent, and we do the conveyance. Simple stuff, folks. Signed, notarized. Tomorrow it's recorded." Donna Zulmira gripped the walker hard. The word widow hit the floor like a dropped dish. Since her husband had gone, she avoided being at the center of any legal conversation, as if words were quicksand. Rafaela looked at her grandmother, then at the realtor's folder. "May I see?" she asked. Marcio reached out his hand, but it wasn't the copy he offered first. It was the speech. "We talked. Aunt Aurelia's surgery is coming up. Insurance won't cover it all. The car payment's late. The power bill at the warehouse. You know how things are. This lot is our salvation. And your grandpa..." His voice dropped half a tone like he was invoking spiritual authority. "Your grandpa always wanted what was best for the family." Underneath the pretty words, there was a scratch. Rafaela took the copy, skimmed the first page, and felt the skin on her nape prickle. The notary office, the book number, the parcel's registration. She flipped the sheet, and then her heart snagged in her chest, the way it does when the truth steps forward. The name on the owner line wasn't what she expected. It wasn't Onofre de Silva and wife Zulmira de Souza. It wasn't Estate of Onofre. It wasn't any of the children either. The name that jumped off the page, in firm scanned blue ink pen, was Rafaela de Souza Nogueira. For a second, the kitchen shrank. The world got small enough to fit inside a signature that looked like hers yet wasn't. Or was it? The R had the same round loop, and Nogueira was the same last name tucked away on her ID. Zuleika lifted a hand to her mouth. The realtor, with a bizarre peddler's reflex, saw the shock and tried to calibrate. "It's procedural, miss. It's listed as a life estate for Donna Zulmira, and the bare title for, he stammered, realizing he was reading aloud. "Name for granddaughter Rafaela. Must have been an advancement, an old recording. Nothing that gets in the way, okay? Everyone signs and we regularize it." Rafaela felt the ground change texture. An old echo rippled through her memory. A Saturday afternoon, Grandpa with a brown folder, and her, a teenager, signing where he pointed, always with the phrase, "Trust Gramps." But that was at the bank, when they opened a savings account for school. It wasn't land. It couldn't be land. A breeze came through the window and set the lace curtains swaying like water. The coffee ritual, the touch of the hand, the blessing, everything stood up inside her like an invisible fence. "This here," Rafaela said, moving the copy slowly. "This is saying the land is mine. Why?" Marcio's eyes clouded, a speck of invisible discomfort. A little muscle twitched at the corner of his mouth. "Don't complicate it, Rafa. Get your feet on the ground. It's paperwork. Your grandpa didn't know these things. He signed whatever they put in front of him. If we get philosophical, we lose the buyer. Let's go to the notary, confirm, and close." The realtor, now savvy to the timing, was already pulling a silver pen from his pocket, like someone setting the salt shaker on the lunch table. "We'll swing by Tadu's office, grab the updated certificate. Boom, boom. I even brought the transfer tax voucher filled out. You just give me the documents and I'll run with it." That's when Rafaela's phone, forgotten on the table, lit up with a new voice message in the group, "Nogueira family. No politics, please." The tiny microphone icon flashed. The sender's name, Bia, Marcio's sister. Length, 1M54s. "Don't hit play," Marcio said too quickly. Rafaela tapped it, her heart keeping time at her fingertip. The kitchen listened, all of it. "Bro, close this fast for God's sake. The guy called me saying if you don't deliver this week, he's throwing the money into Zé Pissarra's lot. And make sure the notary doesn't get cute, because that Tadeu kept stamping the deal for Aunt Norma's house. If they ask about the heir, say the girl's on board and the old lady needs surgery. Only there's a thing, the name on the registry is..." The audio paused, a whisper. "It's the girl's own name, Lowell. But you'll swing it, right? You always do." The audio ended in a hiss of awkward laughter. The word girl flickered in the air like a light bulb about to burn out. Zuleika, pale, gripped the corner of the table. Donna Zulmira, who had seemed up to then oblivious to the modern contraptions of apps, lifted her face and spoke clearly. "Onofre didn't do things halfway. If it's in my granddaughter's name, he had a reason." Marcio raised his hands, trying to rearrange the stage. "Guys, group audio, you know how it is. No context. Bia's anxious, she didn't even get it. And besides, I'm here for you, this is my family. If the deed's in Rafaela's name, even better. We sign with her and done. I even brought a down payment receipt to show this is serious." He pulled a letterhead from the folder, dated the day before and signed by the supposed buyer. The amount written below was hefty, enough to wipe out debts and calm tragedies for a few months. Alongside it, the stamp received from a real estate brokerage nobody in the family knew. "See?" Marcio tapped it with his index finger. "The money's circling. If we don't catch it, it flies off." Rafaela set her grandfather's photo atop the copy of the title, letting the two worlds, the man of the soil and the word on paper, overlap for a moment. In the corner of the image, you could see the trunk of the jacaranda sapling which, on the land, had grown crooked, casting shade. She shut her eyes for 2 seconds, just enough for memory to find its way in the dark. Grandpa at the bank years ago, asking her to sign on striped paper, yes, but also an afternoon at the notary, ink still fresh, Tadeu behind the counter. "Bare title is only the name, my girl," Grandpa had said later on the way home. "The weight is the commitment." "We're going to the notary," Rafaela said at last, opening her eyes. "Now, all of us." And nobody signs anything without understanding what it is. The realtor smiled in relief, like someone who just avoided a stumble. Marcio smiled too, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Perfect," he said. "I'll call Tadeu now. He's my friend." On the way, the white pickup led, kicking up dust that drifted in through car windows like childhood memories. Rafaela drove slow, her grandmother in the back seat and her mother beside her, chewing her anxiety. The radio played an old country tune Grandpa liked, and for a moment it felt like Onofre sat on the edge of the seat, hat in hand, repeating a farm lesson. "Haste is wind, girl. Land is time." Tadu's notary office sat in an old blue-fronted house with a slightly crooked metal sign. Inside it smelled like stored paper, and a ceiling fan made more noise than breeze. Tadu, shiny, bald, and thin-rimmed glasses, lifted his face from the ledgers when the procession came in. He recognized Rafaela and broke into a smile that recalled the times the whole family would come by to notarize a club card or a moto-taxi power of attorney. "Well, if it isn't Onofre's granddaughter," he said. "Miss that man. The most stubborn and most upright fellow these counters ever saw." Marcio stepped forward. "Big to do, my man. Here's the deal. We need an updated certificate for Lot 12, Block B, Sitio das Palmeiras. We're in a hurry, buyer waiting. Before answering, Tadeu shifted his eyes to Rafaela. He had the patience of someone who's seen many families lose themselves over signatures without soul. The certificate will come out, but first, he opened a drawer and pulled out a file wrapped in brown paper. Let me check the history here, which is quicker. His fingers ran the guides like a man who knew the geography of paper. He stopped at a tab with the last name Nogueira, pulled a folder, spread the copies across the counter. The family leaned in. The realtor raised his phone to snap pictures, and Rafaela held her breath like she was diving. There it was, the original registration for Onofre and Zulmira, the annotation of a shed built, the donation of a strip at the back to open a water easement, and finally, 3 years ago, the public deed of donation reserving a life estate for Zulmira, granting the bare title to granddaughter Rafaela. In the corner, Seu Onofre's round signature, notarized by similarity, and below that, a handwritten addendum. In case of need, granddaughter sick Rafaela may, after hearing the family council, allocate the property to a community food production project. Was that when he did that thing? Tadeu asked, eyes up over his glasses. That thing what? Zuleika murmured. The council, Tadeu said, like he was talking about a wedding more than a meeting. Rafaela recalled the afternoon in the yard, wire chair, Grandpa handing out small cardboard-covered notebooks where he'd written by hand, Family Council. Each notebook had a red thread tied to the staple like a quiet seal. The ritual was simple. Before big decisions, they gathered to listen, discuss, and in the end, each person wrote in a single line their position and a commitment. No fancy talk, a word that fits in a finger's worth of chat, Grandpa would say. They'd done it once, twice. After he died, the notebook ended up in the bottom drawer, stacked beneath power bills. He recorded the council? Rafaela asked. You don't record a family council at a notary, my dear, Tadeu smiled, but you keep it like you keep seed. And Onofre kept things. It's here. Tadeu drew from the folder a brown envelope with Grandpa's wobbly handwriting. Council, Lot 12. Inside, the notebook's aged, with lines written by hands that now trembled. Rafaela opened hers. There it was 3 years ago when Grandpa told her about the gift. I, Rafaela, receive what my grandfather gives me as a life commitment. Before selling, listen. Before using, share. If it ever turns into money, first let it turn into food. The realtor grew impatient, scratching his chin. Pretty, poetic. But buyers don't read poetry. Neither do notaries. This doesn't stop a sale. It's all within bounds. It's just will. Let's sign and go. Marcio touched the realtor's arm in a gesture that said, leave it to me. He squared his posture, looked Tadeu in the eye, trying on a costume of moral priority. Tadeu, with all respect to your Onofre, there are people needing surgery. Life is now. The family agrees, the widow agrees, the heir, he pointed at Rafaela, will agree too. It's for the good of everyone. Did you bring the medical authorization, the hospital budget, the insurance denial? Tadeu asked, flat. Marcio blinked. What? You're invoking medical urgency to justify haste. When you use suffering as an argument, you'd better bring proof. I'm a notary, not a judge, but I've learned proof saves you shame down the road. The air changed weight. The realtor rifled through the folder noisily. There was no budget. There were, yes, transfer tax vouchers already paid by the buyer or by someone on his behalf. There was also a brokerage contract signed by Marcio, without a power of attorney from the family. There was a deposit receipt with tiny footer text. If the deal is not concluded due to seller's fault, a 30% penalty applies. Rafaela touched the paper with her fingertips. 30%, on a big number. The loss that would become a debt if they didn't give in to the rush. See how serious this is, Marcio said, seizing the handle of the argument. There's already a penalty, a paid voucher, a commitment. If we back out, it falls on us. On us who? Rafaela asked. The one who signed this was you. On whose behalf? Marcio wrestled his tongue inside his mouth, searching for a word that could save the ship at the last minute. On behalf of the family, he said, and the word sounded cheap. Tadeu folded his arms slowly. Without a power of attorney, nobody signs for a family. The weight of the pen is heavier than it looks, my boy. Silence. Only the fan droned as usual, a hum that seemed to say, easy. Outside, a horse-drawn cart clopped by, the rhythmic sound of hooves reminding them that life also goes on the simple side. I just want to help, Marcio said finally. and this time there was true weariness in his defense. "I'm drowning, everyone is. The buyer is solid. I made a deal with him at the warehouse and I can't stiff him. If this lot goes through, I can breathe, and you solve your issues. I know Onofre put it in Rafaela's name, but he wouldn't want to see us broke." Rafaela thought about how easy it is to conjure the will of the dead to serve the living. The photo in her jeans pocket scraped, reminding her that memory has claws too. She handed the envelope of notebooks back to Tadu, who, out of respect, pushed it back into her hands. "Take it home," he said. "Family councils happen at home. If you need, I'll come by in the late afternoon and explain every paper. A notary isn't just a stamp. It's so people understand what they're signing." The realtor huffed, like someone who'd just lost the round. "Fine, late afternoon, but today," he said, checking his watch, "because tomorrow the money changes direction." They drove back in silence. On the road, the world seemed to stretch, the dust now settled, the trees repeating the color of time. When they got home, before anything else, Donna Zulmira asked them to set the table out in the yard, under the jacaranda's crooked shade. Zuleika lit the stove and made coffee with water from the clay filter, the smell rising like a perfumed memory. Rafaela brought a chintz tablecloth and the notebooks. Her grandmother's walker scraped the ground up to the head of the table. "Your grandpa did it like this," she said. "First we drink the coffee, then we speak, and no one gets up before writing the word that will hold up the legs." They sat, the sun already high, the day promising heat. Marcio put out, hovered near the edge, phone in hand, taking a hail of messages from the realtor. "Well?" Client asking. "I'm holding him." "I'll start," Rafaela said. "The question is simple and huge. Sell or not sell? If we sell, why? If we don't, why? And how?" Zuleika breathed, gazing at the yard like she was searching for answers in the texture of the world. "Aunt Aurelia's surgery is real," she said softly, "but it'll be through the public health system. It's already scheduled. What worries me is Daniel's back rent, your cousin. The rest we can handle in installments." Marcio raised his hand, impatient. "And my shop. The supplier ate me alive. I'm in the red. If this money comes in, I clear it. I promise I'll pay you back some other way." "You promised that when you sold the downtown unit," Zuleika said without raising her voice. "Pay back some other way. The tab for that other way never lands." The words hung in the air. The wind rustled the jacaranda leaves, and in the crooked trunk there was a rusty nail where one day they'd tied a red ribbon for a birthday. Rafaela noticed and smiled inwardly. Grandpa liked to tie ribbons, said every knot was a word nailed into the wood, a promise with a witness. "Before deciding, there's something else," Rafaela said. "The audio." Everyone looked at her. "It's not just haste, there's maneuvering." The realtor admitted he knows my name is on the title, but wants to regularize it afterward. "There's a deposit receipt signed by someone who couldn't sign. There's a penalty that lands on the heads of those who didn't sign. That's not urgency, it's pressure. And there's something else," added Donna Zulmira, her voice settling firm. "Onofre left a condition. If the land turned to money, it turned to food first. It wasn't a metaphor, he was plain." Rafaela opened the notebook. Her words from 3 years ago were there, black as coal. "Before using share." Marcio rubbed his face like he was trying to wipe away the marks time makes inside. "And what do you want? Plant a garden? Turn the lot into a utopia? While we owe at the grocery store?" "We can do both," Rafaela said. "We can build an answer that isn't sell. And if it is sell, it's at the right price, with transparency and a clear destination. What we can't do is rush and do it wrong." "The buyer doesn't wait for a clear destination," he shot back. "He waits for a signed paper. Then he can go find another lot," said Donna Zulmira, with a calm that cut sharper than any shout. "This has always been ground for planting promise and harvesting decency." The promised late afternoon arrived quickly, bringing Tadu and 2 plastic chairs he hauled from the office like they were his appendages. In his shirt pocket, a simple pen that looked like it had written half the town. He took a seat at the table, laid the papers out methodically, and before anything else asked for a coffee. "I'm going to explain this like you explain a map," he said. "The asset is in Rafaela's name, with a life estate for Donna Zulmira. That means the one who lives and uses is the widow. The one who has the bare title, the legal skeleton, is the granddaughter. To sell, you need both. And since there's a moral clause, the council, it's not that it's in the law, but it's in the family's word. A ribbon knot doesn't bind the law, but it binds shame." He turned the guides, showed the brokerage contract with no power of attorney, explained the penalty risk, showed that a transfer tax voucher paid by a third party obligates no one. and finally he pulled from the envelope something no one had seen. A letter dated a month before Onofre passed, kept at the notary under the note, "Unopened private testament, deliver to the family only." "I found it today, rummaging the old paper drawer," Tadeo said. "Your handwriting, Zulmira." "His," she said, her hand gliding over the envelope. Rafaela opened it carefully. Inside, the paper bore Grandpa's firm hand, a script that seemed to fence in the words. He spoke of the land as if talking about a child. "If one day I'm not here to point south in your eyes, let the compass be simple. No one sells out of the hunger of haste. If you do sell, let it be for the true price, and let that money first show up as a plate served on the table of whoever needs it. And if life squeezes you blind, look to the jacaranda. It will remind you. The jacaranda, the crooked trunk, generous shade, the rusty nail with the ghost of the ribbon, the ritual that returns like someone walking around the block and coming back with a message tied to their foot. The jacaranda," Rafaela repeated, almost a whisper. It kept something. Night fell before curiosity found an answer. Under the weak light of the string bulbs, the family decided not to sign anything, to keep the receipt and the contract for a lawyer to see, to call Aunt Aurelia in another city to confirm the surgery. Marzio left earlier, saying he had to take care of something urgent at the warehouse. The realtor, over WhatsApp, sent voice notes shorter and shorter, then longer again, then proposed just a little advance to hold the buyer. There was no reply. In the middle of the night, Rafaela got up without making a sound. The house slept. She went out to the yard, her phone's little flashlight aimed at the ground, and stopped in front of the jacaranda. The thick trunk held scars only trees know how to read. She ran her hand over it slowly, like waking a tame animal. Her finger hit a slight bump where the nail was. The metal gave, a little loose. Something scratched inside the wood, a bit of plastic, maybe paper. She ran to the kitchen, grabbed a round-tipped paring knife and came back. With the care of someone operating on her own story, she worked the nail, the wood, the space. A grimy bit of plastic appeared, stained by time. Inside, a tiny roll, a small cylinder, wrapped in black electrical tape. Rafaela swallowed her gasp and, without thinking twice, undid the tape. The plastic opened with an old sigh. 2 papers dropped into her palm, a photo and a note. The photo was from the day of the donation, at the notary. A younger Tadeo, Onofre smiling without showing his teeth, and Rafaela with a pen in hand, surprised like a teenager. On the back, the date and the phrase, "I verified." The note, written in 2 lines, said, "If this house forgets, the trunk remembers. The true deed Tadeo kept. And I put in the jacaranda the proof that the girl knew." Rafaela's breathing turned into a staircase, without a handrail. She leaned her back against the trunk, sat on the packed dirt and began to cry. Not just from sadness, but from that blend of shock, love, anger, and gratitude only families can provoke. She cried until her throat burned, and then she chuckled softly, alone, like someone amused by a secret shared with a tree. Dawn brought a bluish light, and also news that came too fast. The realtor had brought a partner to look at the land in the middle of the night. A neighbor called saying he'd seen flashlight beams and heard talk by the fence. When Rafaela stepped out the gate, the same man in dark glasses was waiting, minus the polished hurry of Sunday morning. He'd lost the elegant rush. Now the urgency was raw. "Look, miss," he said, his voice sawing off politeness. "Nobody here was born yesterday. If you don't want to sell, fine. But my client's already paid fees, already paid me a deposit. The penalty's coming. I'll sue. And you, young lady, with your name on that registry, you're the one who'll get burned." Rafaela breathed. Courage stuck to memory like they were sisters. She held up the notary photo and the jacaranda note. "You'll file suit," she said slowly, "and I'll file a criminal complaint. Contract with no power of attorney, pressure, bad faith rush, receiving an improper deposit. And there's more. We're going to hold a neighborhood assembly. We're going to call people, call the radio. We'll read my grandfather's letter and open the family council. And we're going to say out loud that before the land is sold, it becomes food." The man twisted his mouth into a crooked, humorless grin. "Food doesn't pay debt," he said. "It pays hunger," another voice answered behind her. Donna Zulmira came forward, Walker scraping the concrete, and took her place beside her granddaughter, small and standing like a low fence that still keeps the cow out. Zuleika joined them, apron tied, hair hastily pinned. Neighbors started spilling from their houses, drawn by a rumor that travels faster than the wind. "Tonight," Rafaela said loud enough for the street to hear, We're holding the assembly. You're invited to listen, not to talk. The ones talking are the ones who stay, the ones who planted, the ones who've eaten the shade, the ones who will share whatever comes. The man measured the street, measured the sun, measured the women and the tree. In the end, he lowered his sunglasses, stuffed his hands in his pockets and left, chewing on paper promises. The day ran in a back and forth of calls, visits, and pots on the stove. Tadeu confirmed he'd come. The parish priest lent them the PA speaker. The grocery store owner brought 2 tables. The public health team, who'd been promoting community gardens, arrived with seedlings of lettuce, chives, and kale. In the neighborhood group chat, the improvised flyer had a photo of the Jacaranda. Assembly at Lot 12 today, 7 p.m. Bia's audio, Marcio's sisters, buzzed from phone to phone like an angry bee, and the laugh at the end boomeranged back as shame. By 7, the yard was full. People standing, sitting, kids chasing a flat soccer ball, a dog trying to make sense of so much talk. Marcio showed up around 7:30, tense in eyes and clothes like a guy walking into a party he wasn't invited to. He leaned against the fence, not daring to approach the table. The realtor didn't come. Tadeu asked for the floor. He spoke like drawing a map in dirt with a stick, slowly and with arrows. This paper here, he raised the title, says who the state recognizes as the owner of a piece of ground. This other one, he raised Onofre's letter, says who this land recognizes as people. When both papers point the same way, life moves. When they turn their backs on each other, life spins. Short laughs, nods. Tadeu went on. What happened here was haste wearing an urgency mask. And there was also a mistake, a contract signed by someone who couldn't sign. That not only hinders a sale, it puts weight on the head of someone who didn't even know about the mess. Rafaela drew a breath and told the Jacaranda story. She showed the note, the photo. The street, already glued to the tale, went, "Oh." The priest, smiling to himself, murmured something about parables the earth tells better than books. Zuleika read out softly the notebook passage about before using share. And then Rafaela said what no one expected to hear in that tone of an announcement. The land is not being sold now. And before anyone says we're trying to hide wealth, here's the plan. Half of it becomes a community garden starting tomorrow with a work party. The other half, we draw up a project to build a community kitchen to sell affordable meals. If life someday demands we sell, we gather again, do the math right, report it all, and keep my grandfather's wish. Plate first, money after. Murmurs. Hands raised. Neighbors looking at each other like they'd just seen a door where there used to be a wall. Someone shouted, "I'm in for the work party." Another, "I've got a hoe." A third, "I'll bring seedlings." Tadeu wrote down names like a man sowing people. Marcio, still at the fence, finally moved. He walked to the table, asked for the floor with a short gesture, and for a second he was the guy who'd first come into the family with a smile that wanted to belong. He began, his voice catching. "I messed up bad. I thought fixing fast meant fixing well. I got tangled with people worse than me. I smelled the money and forgot the smell this house likes is coffee. He looked at Rafaela, then at Zuleika. "I have no excuse, only debt. If you'll let me, I'll work at the work party every day. And," he turned to Tadeu, "tomorrow I'll go to your office and sign to cancel what I signed, out of my pocket. This school's expensive, but I think I can still learn." There was no applause. There was a quiet nodding, a "we'll see," a space left open for things to change or not, according to the walk. The antagonist didn't become a hero, he just stopped pushing the world the wrong way. Consequence, the next day, Tadeu filed a notice about the irregular contract, guided Marcio to answer for his acts, and the buyer vanished like the sound of a car fading in the distance. The penalty became a weightless sheet. For a while, Marcio's shop served as a drop-off point for donations to the community kitchen. Later, he sold shelving to the kitchen itself at a discount, not out of heroism, but because he learned that some other way comes with receipts and accounting. A month later, Lot 12 smelled of damp earth every afternoon. The seedlings from the health team grew under the jacaranda's dappled shade. The community kitchen began as a makeshift wood fire stove, later as a brick building with plaster still to be done. On the wall, a shelf held notebooks, family council, neighborhood council, garden cash box. Words fit in a finger's worth of chat, the way Onofre wanted. And the ritual came back transformed. On Sundays, instead of only coffee and blessing, there was coffee, blessing, and the cut of the first bunch of kale, shared between those who worked that week and those who had nothing in the fridge. On the Sunday they served the first open lunch. Rafaela woke up early. The light came into the kitchen at the same angle as always, and for an instant she saw Grandpa leaning in the doorway, hat in hand, as if he were about to sit and hear the neighborhood news. She took the cloth strainer, now washed with special care, and made the coffee. She called her grandmother, who came slowly, the walker inscribing its signature across the floor. Zuleika straightened the chintz tablecloth. The smell of beans from the pressure cooker, mixed with fresh bread, the radio music and the noise of kids outside learning to water without making mud. "God keep you, my granddaughter," said Donna Zulmira, repeating the gesture with her open palm. Rafaela rested her forehead on her grandmother's hand, and before drinking tied a new red ribbon to the jacaranda trunk. She made 2 firm knots, the second over the first, and whispered, "Promise with a witness." The wind toyed with carrying words away, and the ribbon danced with grace as if it were part of the canopy. Tadeu arrived with a stack of plates and the pen in his pocket. Marcio showed up a little later, sweaty, with sacks of potatoes, and a shyness he was relearning to handle. Neighbors brought vegetables, a bunch of bananas, a simple cake. Someone hung a hand-painted strip on the clothesline. Plate first, money after. The priest said a short phrase about multiplied bread, and the lady from the grocery store, who'd never been much of a churchgoer, answered Amen with her heart. With the ladle in hand, Rafaela looked around. The land they'd tried to turn into currency now returned as a plate, shade, and conversation. The deed, which had once been just paper that could be weaponized, was now a compass too. Grandpa's photo, clipped to the shelf with a clothespin, seemed to smile without showing teeth. She served the first plate to her grandmother, the second to her mother, the third to a little boy who'd shown up in a soccer jersey, eyes bright with curiosity. And then, before any speech, before any applause, she pulled one of the notebooks to the center of the table and opened to a blank page. "Word of the day," she said. "Everyone writes one." People stepped closer. Pens went round. On the page, letters appeared. Crooked, pretty, shy, decided, share, care, learn, repair, stay, plant, answer, breathe. Rafaela's came last. She touched the tip of the pen to the page, glanced at the trunk with the ribbon, and, thinking of her grandfather, wrote a word that seemed too simple for everything they'd been through, yet was the only one that could hold all the others by the hand: belong. When she shut the notebook, the wind lifted the tablecloth's edge, the coffee breathed out its perfume, and the street understood in that way only life does. No one sells out of the hunger of haste a piece of land that's already become home. And if one day they sell, it will be because time, word, and plate pointed in the same direction. That late afternoon, as the sun dissolved behind the association's roof and the jacaranda's shadow signed its name across the ground, Rafaela sank into the wire chair and let her head fall back. Her phone buzzed. A short message from Bia. "I'm sorry. I wronged you. If you need someone to peel potatoes, I can." Rafaela typed, "Come." She put the phone away, closed her eyes for a moment, and heard, deep in her ear, Seu Onofre's voice. "Haste is wind. Land is time." Lot 12 now was both, and the city, which had learned so many lessons the hard way, this time learned at a set table. The world didn't turn perfect. Bills didn't vanish. Aunt Aurelia's surgery happened through the public health system, with waiting and paperwork, the way things happen in this country. Marzio answered for his contracts, learned to ask for receipts, and not to use family as his proxy. The realtor moved to another neighborhood. Tadeu kept notarizing signatures and every now and then, recognizing the shine in the eyes of someone who understands that paper isn't the enemy, it's a tool. And on Sundays, the blessing ritual gained one last gesture. After, "God keep you, my granddaughter," Donna Zulmira touched the red ribbon on the jacaranda with her fingertips and murmured with a smile, "Old age had plenty of time to practice. Promise with a witness." In Rafaela's eyes, the promise had grown roots, and when night came, bringing the chirp of crickets and the fresh smell of resting soil, she knew with the calm of someone who truly listened to her grandfather that from then on, the family would know the difference between haste and purpose, and that the name on the deed had stopped being a fright to become a commitment that feeds.